Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a special version of Tales from the Fandom. I have posted probably for about a week or so that since I had a little bit of extra time in my podcast directory for an upload, but I couldn't upload a full episode to get ahead for myself, that I figured I would do an Ask Me Anything of what people posted on the Facebook page or my personal page or Instagram. So I have a few questions here that I'd like to go ahead and get to, and I'll give you their name and read the question and then answer the question. The first question, there's a few of them that were like this. Zeng This, the podcast, along with Joezilla, at Joezilla on Instagram, was basically what made me decide to one day do a podcast. What got you into podcasting? What got me into it was about 2 years ago, I decided I wanted to start doing things in my life because for a long time, our family has been focused on our 3 kids who were really young at the time. There's a lot of need to focus on them, their schoolwork, and really just put the energy towards them. And now that they're getting older, both my wife and I can start doing what we'd like to do. And I decided I'd order a microphone during Black Friday on Amazon. They were super cheap. And I had no clue what I was going to do for a while. I didn't know what type of podcast I wanted to do. I was toying around with a whole bunch of different ideas. And finally, I decided that I just wanted to talk to people that were into nerdy things because I don't get to go out and do a lot because I'm here with the kids. I work at night. I work during the day when the kids are in school. So there's not a lot of time for me to socialize or go meet new people or go hang out or go to conventions a lot of the time. So this is my outlet for doing so. So that's really what got me into it and why I decided to start this podcast. At Mount Moon Cosplay, Clara, whose episode just came out this week, as well as Joezilla, again on Instagram, did ask an overlapping question about how do I find my guests. Well, initially, and then Joezilla also asked about how did I go about finding my very first guest. Well, when I started the podcast, I reached out to all of my friends because I have a lot of nerdy friends all over the country from high school and college and workplaces and just people I've met and become friends with. And those were the very first people I reached out to see if they'd be on the podcast. And you've heard from some of them, like Jaquel, who was episode 1, or Eden, episode 2, Chelsea, episode 6. I've had a bunch of friends come on and continue to come on, either making repeat appearances or they've been able to do an episode or two. I do have a few more friends that I'd love to get on the podcast. It's just either scheduling wise or time wise, we're just not being able to line up as well as we could be. But hopefully more of my friends will be able to come on the podcast and talk about cool things because they're into a lot of different fandoms that I might not be into. There's some that we're really into, like overlapping, and I know those conversations would be really fun and great. As far as how I find guests now, Instagram and Facebook are really the 2 big ones. I take a look at what people are either cosplaying or writing about or being interested in, and I reach out to them, and sometimes I don't hear anything back. Sometimes I do hear things back. It really just depends on everyone's schedule. If my emails or instant messages go into basically like the spam folder. So it just really depends on what happens and what we're able to make connections with. Some people are really quick on getting everything back to me because I do send out a questionnaire and some information about the podcast. And some people do take a little while or just, I guess, become not interested. And that's okay, too. So I do have a list of people that I reach out to, usually on a monthly basis, new people. And then I do tend to follow up occasionally with those that had expressed interest and I'd sent the information on. And I always hope that they get back to me, but if they don't, that's okay. And then I also do reach out to like authors that I like or other podcasters that I like listening to, which is why on Monday's episode you'll hear the hosts from Zeng This, Ellie and Zenger, and I have a few other podcast hosts coming up in the future that I hope to record with. So it's just a matter of me reaching out to those people and hoping that we can make something happen. At Joezilla from Instagram also asked, how was your family's reaction to this new venture? And what made you decide to continue doing it while making friends and fans across the country and even into other countries? My family's good with it. My wife, it mostly impacts my wife when I do recordings at night. I do them Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. When I first started, I was doing recordings almost every night. But I realized I couldn't do that because I needed to also have family time with my kids, my wife, and we needed to focus on doing stuff for ourselves too, which is why I've cut back to 3 nights where I have open to record. Not that I necessarily record on those 3 nights, it's just that they're made available for people to record with. But everyone else is fine with it, and I don't think they have any issue. And I continue doing it because I love making new friends and across all over the place. And one of the things I love is being able to record with people that are international, like Raven over in the Netherlands, Carrie over in England, Danya in England as well, Vic down in Australia. I mean, I've been really blessed with the people that I have been able to talk to. So it's been a lot of fun, and I hope you check out their episodes too. Sadie, who's been a guest on this podcast a few times, she asked me, what was your first fandom in your life? And I have to go back and think about it, and I can bring up a couple different time periods of fandoms for myself. I mean, the initial ones were like Voltron and Transformers and all those 80s cartoon shows that I really dug. He-Man, Thundercats, G.I. Joe. I was of course into all of those shows. Then in elementary school, I used to hang out or play with a friend that was into Star Wars, but I hated Star Wars at the time, which is crazy. I used to play with the toys, but I hated Star Wars. But I think my first really big one that I got into, both happened kind of at the same time in middle school, is I was gifted a box set of Lord of the Rings and really got into that. And then at the same time, I got into Star Trek: The Next Generation, and is also at the same time when Star Trek 6 came out in the movie theater. So those were my 2 really big fandoms that I got into to start off with, and then it's kind of just been downhill from there. Clara with Mount Moon Cosplay also asked, have I ever done a live broadcast? And the answer to that is no. I don't do live broadcasts. I don't have the setup to do it. I do my recordings. I schedule when the podcast is going to be released, and that's pretty much it. Maybe one day in the future I'll do something live, but it's not something I'm comfortable with quite yet. Anna Lay Cosplay, who was a guest on this podcast, also sent in a question. She asked, vampires or werewolves? And that's a tough question. It really depends on their depiction. Such as Underworld, where the werewolves were hairless and terrible, terrible CGI creations. I would say vampires. On the other hand, there's certain role-playing games that White Wolf put out where I loved vampires and werewolves. It just depends. If I had to pick one, I would probably pick vampires because they're more in control of who they are in the long run, and they're not depicted as kind of crazy, every full moon, you have to kind of turn yourself over to the wolf. But those are classic depictions. It just depends on the setting. Like if we were talking about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, vampires versus Buffy the Vampire Slayer, werewolves, I'd probably go with vampire because, again, the werewolf, if you watch the show, werewolves kind of got a bad rap at times, and clearly they just kind of went mindless, whereas the vampire at least had some control. I mean, there's a demon in them, but, it is what it is. She also asked Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter. And like I said, Lord of the Rings was one of my first fandoms, but I think I would probably side with Harry Potter on that for a number of different reasons. I love that I can relate more to that world than Middle Earth, and it's just very inclusive and very fun to be in, and the people that are in the fandom I really enjoy. So definitely Harry Potter. Rebecca Parker, who was a guest on this podcast also, wrote in and asked, how do you deal with discussing fandoms you know little about or fandoms you dislike? Well, as far as fandoms that I know little about, I try to let the other person drive that conversation and explain it to me. I know that there's a few episodes like with, most recently, like Koholint and Allie, Pocket Cosplay. They both are really into some current anime that I've never seen before. So I try to let them drive the conversation about the fandom and why they're into it and what makes them interested in it, and I ask questions. Other times I'll do research, just enough to really like get me knowledgeable about it or the basics of it. But really, the show, this podcast is for the people I have on to talk about their fandoms, and I'd love for them to teach me about it and get me interested in it. And that's why there's so many different things that I've been checking out lately that people have suggested because of their passion for their fandoms. As far as fandoms I dislike, when I initially started the podcast, I swore to myself at one point that I was never going to talk about Twilight. Like, that was going to be a fandom that was going to be off limits. And I had Anna, I think her episode is episode 39, and she is really big into Twilight. She really likes it, and I couldn't, like, it's not for me to say what people like or don't like, and people like Twilight, and they have valid reasons for it, and some people really like it, even if my opinion of it is totally different, and I might dislike it, but I'll still talk about it, and I'll give my points of view of where I'm coming from as far as the fandom. But again, with something like Twilight, I tried to read the first book and couldn't because it was bad, in my opinion. And I've never seen the movies because I've got other movies that I'd rather watch and spend my time with. But I can't exclude someone who loves that fandom. Just like there's fandoms that I probably like that other people don't. And that's okay. Like, not everyone likes Firefly, because I know for a while people were really pushing Firefly on others, and I know I used to do the same thing, and it turned people off, quite frankly, and you just have to understand and appreciate that not everyone's going to agree with you, and you're going to have differences of opinion, but we're all fans of something, and there's always some common ground that we can find. Sadie also asked a question, a different question, and she asked, if you could have any pet, real or fictional species, what would it be and what would you name it? And I've been trying to think about what species of creature or pet or whatever would I have, and I'm going to the Harry Potter fandom on this one. I would love a Bowtruckle. I think, number one, they're probably a little bit easier to maintain than, say, a Niffler or a Kneazle or even like Neville's Toad, because, come on, Trevor just is able to escape anything and everything. But a Bowtruckle is cute. He looks like a little leafy green dude, and could fit in my pocket, and so we could go anywhere. And I actually don't know what I would name him. Hopefully he would have a name and we'd be able to figure out what his name is. So that would be pretty cool. And that's it with the questions that I got. So thank you to Joezilla. You can check him out on Instagram at Joezilla. Clara at Mount Moon Cosplay. Sadie at Sadie by Design. Annalay at Annalay Cosplay. Rebecca Parker, and the guest Elian Zenger at Zeng This Podcast for sending in questions. This was really fun. So hopefully you have learned something about me, and probably in a couple months I'll try and do another one and see what questions get sent in. We have a really great May lineup of episodes coming out. Please check them out. We have Zeng This kicking it off the first week of May. We've also got a few other great people. I'm trying to pull up the list now because apparently it closed, which makes me sad. All right, well, we have Zeng This, which I mentioned, on May 1st. On May 8th is Emma. She's an artist. She goes by Discombobble. On May 15th is Maki Naro. He was on the Penny Arcade special strip search that ran a couple of years ago, and he's a webcomic artist, and he also does commissions. The 22nd is author and artist Lex Chase. And then on May 29th is Sarah, and you might know her on Instagram as That Princess Girl. She does a lot of Disney bounding, which she's phenomenal at. And we'll also be having a special Star Wars 40th anniversary special coming out on May 25th with guests to be announced later. And that's it. And then June is our anniversary, so June 6th, we'll have a special episode, and then we'll have a few different episodes releasing as well every Monday. So thank you for listening and subscribing to the podcast and sending in your messages, and just keep putting us out there for people to listen to. Recommend them to your friends or family. Share the episodes on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. And I look forward to hearing more from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/talesfromthefandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.